Hello and welcome to the finale, the grand finale of North Coast Church's Evidence for God. If you've been keeping up with the series, so far we have argument from universe-sized golf ball, argument from the infinite regression of a creator god, our argument from irreducible complexity, and then my personal favorite, the last one we did, which was argument from objective morality. This guy, I think it's very fitting, the first frame of this video. This guy right here, that face pretty much sums up how I feel about these videos. It's just like utter shock and disappointment. Like, I had so little faith that these videos were actually going to be decent, and yet every single one of them just gets worse. And I didn't think that was possible. Like, that first video was so unhinged and like made so little sense. But God, the last one, he just goes on for like 5 minutes about how there has to be objective morality, and then his evidence is all people disagreeing about morals. Like, it blows my mind. So I guess today we see what the fifth and final proof of God is today.
Hey Daily Dosers, we're coming
Hi,
at you
Chris.
for evidence number 5 for God's
Evidence
existence.
number 5.
One of the most popular questions that you get, and if I'm doing a debate or if I'm doing some kind of discussion.
Oh God. Oh my God. I would love to see this man in a debate. I would give anything to watch this man up, like, to actually face-to-face talking with another human being, because the way that he like asserts things, I cannot believe, without actually seeing it, that this man has ever had a conversation about this with anybody. Like, because no sane person, no sane religious person even, would let him get away with, like, the amount of bullshit that he has in every single one of these proofs for God so far. God, I would love to watch this man in a debate.
I'm doing a class on this, or I'm teaching at a
Oh God!
college.
Oh, teaching at a college? Which college campus lets this man teach somebody?
One of the most popular questions I get at the end of a conversation
Oh,
is
God.
people generally tend to nod along and go, okay. Now, again, what I just gave you guys in the last 4 days and
Wait. People.
teaching at a local college, one of the most popular questions I get at the end of a conversation is people generally tend to nod along and go, okay.
The most common question you get is for people to just sort of nod along and say, okay.
Now, again, what I just gave you guys in the last 4 days and 5 minutes, I generally will tease out, give examples, give evidences.
Oh God. Evidences. We
Laboratory
love that.
tests for those things, and that each of those classes.
I would love to see his laboratory test for objective morality.
Exceed 2 or 3 hours, but try to just
Oh, Jesus,
compartmentalize it into a
fuck.
small thing. But then people always go, okay, fine. But if God is so good, then why is there so much evil in the world?
I mean, if it's the God that you're asserting exists, the one that is supposedly omnipotent, omnibenevolent, and omniscient, knows everything, can do everything, and is ultimately good, yeah, there's a whole lot of problems with that.
And when we say that, I think one of the fundamental questions we have to ask is kind of what we talked about yesterday, which is, first of all, where are you getting this idea of evil from? We have to first have an objective standard.
God, I'm so ready for this guy to just, like, stand here for 5 minutes and try to explain away why all of the things that the God of the Bible does that we don't consider to be things that we could morally do, how that makes sense.
Of what evil is in order to dictate that anything is evil, because ultimately, if all we are natural blind processes, if you and I are just bags of stardust that are here by chance and had no real meaning or purpose in the first place,
We're just bags of stardust. That's all we are. I mean, for the most part, yeah. I mean, we don't have any meaning or purpose like you try and ascribe to us.
then what I do to you and what you do to me and what we do to each other is ultimately meaningless. So we actually
In general, like in the grand scheme of the universe, yeah. I mean, what we do individually on a universal scale is like it basically amounts to nothing. But as far as it applies to each individual person and their own personal experience and their own life, then yeah, it matters a lot. Again, it's like morality. It's subjective.
have to first borrow from God this idea of good and evil.
We have to borrow the idea of good and evil from a god. So basically, in saying that, it's basically asserting that without God, there can be no good or evil. When what actually is reality is without your made-up God, there is no objective moral standard, which is the case in reality and is how all of us live. So I don't like, if you are so averse to the idea that of a world with no objective morality, then that's where you live. I don't know what to tell you.
Or to make a case against him. But let's just argue that we can. And let's say that in the world there is gratuitous evil. It seems to be of no value whatsoever. It's just evil stuff.
I mean, yeah, even if we're going from a subjective point of view of like what the majority of people would consider to be good and evil in the world, yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff that if your God was actually omnibenevolent as well as omnipotent, they wouldn't exist.
Disease, famine,
Yeah.
rape.
Disease, which your God supposedly created. Famine, which is generally caused by some sort of natural disaster, some sort of drought, which again, your God would control and or create.
Genocide, homicide.
Rape, genocide, homicide, which, not always immoral in the Bible. Kind of important.
These things take place. It's just evil. It's horrible that it happens.
Mm-hmm.
If God is so powerful, he ought to be able to stop it. And if God is so loving, he should want to stop it, shouldn't he?
Yeah. There, end of video.
And since there is evil, God is either not all powerful and therefore not God, or he's not all loving and therefore not God. And now there's probably 100 things in there that actually have fallacies inside of them.
Okay.
But at the heart of it, we're really asking the question, why doesn't God do something about the suffering in the world? Which is to kind of put God on trial and say, God, if you're there, why aren't you doing something? Which truly isn't an argument against God existing.
I mean, against a God existing, the fact that evil exists, no, that is not an argument against it. But against your specific God, with all of the traits that you ascribe to him, all of the omnipotence, omniscience, omnibenevolence, yeah, that disproves your God. If there is even based on your objective morality that you think you have, that you think you get from God, that morality, in many cases, is infringed upon by things that happen in this world. Things you would find to be immoral, supposedly because God also finds them to be immoral and gave you that feeling. So, either your God is not omnipotent or not omnibenevolent. You can't have both and have there be evil. Like, your specific God, you can't do it. If you want to argue that there is a God, then this does not disprove it. But if you want to argue that it is your God the way that you say he exists, then yeah, he does not exist based on just this fact alone.
Because what if it were the case, and it's not, that there is a God, he just doesn't care about stopping things, or he just doesn't care about helping people?
Yeah, then this would mean nothing. Then if this does nothing to disprove the idea that there could be a God that has no interest in us.
That's not an argument that God doesn't exist. It would just mean you would say, there was a God and I don't like how he acts. But I think the Bible does you one better. And it says that the God that we believe exists is powerful enough to stop it. His love, when it comes to his love isn't ultimately concerned with stopping every bit of evil that has ever happened, but instead to draw people to himself even through those trials and through those tribulations.
So basically, he could stop it. Oh, and he wants to, but he's got to work in very mysterious ways. He can't just stop all the evil, because then, what if there was no evil? Then what would draw people to him? I mean, why would people seek out a god that could supposedly stop everything that is evil if there was nothing evil to scare them and to hurt them in the first place? That seems valid.
Nowhere in Scripture does it say that if God is powerful, he will stop everything bad that will ever happen to us. So then to put God on trial for not stopping the stuff that in Scripture he said he wasn't going to do doesn't make a lot of sense.
Okay, yeah, but again, you cannot be omnipotent and omnibenevolent and have there be evil. You can't, like, okay, if your argument is that God cares more about having people experience bad things so that they come to him, and that's his idea of good, that is not omnibenevolence.
If I told you for certain, I am not like this, and I'm definitely not doing this, and then I don't do that, would you tell me I was being inconsistent with my nature? No, you would say, you kind of promised that's exactly what was going to happen, and that's what's...
Yeah, but you, at the same time, did not say, I am omnibenevolent, but, you know, I mean, I'm not going to intervene while you're being murdered. I mean, I'm not... What then incentive would you have to devote yourself to me if you were never being murdered in the first place? It's really a matter of convenience.
Scripture says in this world you will have trouble.
He's so quiet. It's like it's hurting him to go through this. It's like, oh, you know, he's trying to help you, but you just can't see how, and that's what really matters.
Jesus then gives us the hope of saying, but this life is short, it's a vapor in the wind, and ultimately, God says that I have overcome the world. And this isn't...
Okay, so it's okay that God doesn't stop all the evil, because life doesn't matter. Life doesn't matter at all. Okay, oh, interesting, because if life doesn't matter because there's something after it, then what objective moral do you have to say that you should get to stay alive? Because if all your morals are objective, and the reason that God doesn't stop all of the bad things from happening is because ultimately living doesn't matter, then what objective moral reason are you giving for life being a good thing? Almost like there's a whole lot of inconsistency when you try and mash all these things together.
Saying that atheists can't be good people, that is no part of it. I think some of the greatest people I know are people that aren't believers. In fact, there's some people that I know that are quote-unquote Christians that are pretty messed up, including yours truly. But that's not really an argument. And if you meet someone and you go, well, I met this Christian one time and they were really rude, that has nothing to do with someone's philosophical ideology, does it? That's like me meeting someone who's an atheist who's rude and saying, therefore, there must be a God. You would joke with me and you would go, that's you can't take that seriously. If I meet a mean atheist, can I make the assumption then that there must be a God? No, but what you're saying is you're being inconsistent with your worldview, but ultimately...
What is the point of any of this? Like, I mean, I get none of it's necessarily wrong. He's just wandering on with no real point, it feels like.
Atheism is trying to make the best sense of this worldview, and a lot of times people who are atheistic preach this idea of, let's just be good people, we don't need a God to do that.
Yeah.
But let me make this counter argument, because I get challenged with this
Let's
all the
hear
time. Well, almost everywhere that's ever fought was on religious bases, but almost no one does their research. In fact, there's a guy he wrote the book, The Encyclopedia of the Wars, and he came out to this idea that only about 2 to 7% of all deaths in all of the past of every single war that's ever been had any religious cause whatsoever. And even those religious ones weren't pertinently saying, God wanted me to do this. That jumped it down to that 2% mark.
What does that matter? Like, what bearing does that have at all on the idea that your God can't exist as you describe him to? Just the fact that not a large percentage of people who have died in war have died believing that they were sent into that war by their God? Like, there's no correlation here between what you're saying and what the point you're trying to make.
And again, any ideology that's based on a body count doesn't make any sense. In fact, if you took just the people who were killed under 20th century communist...
Oh God. Oh God, not this again. Oh, not this one. You're not gonna give me the, what is it, 100 million people killed by communism?
Atheist regimes. Your body count's around 100 million people who were actually murdered.
Okay, so that, for those of you who don't know, that statistic comes from a book of basically people who were trying to discredit the idea of socialism in any form, and so they were, in order to get to that magic number of 100 million, they were including pretty much every possible death that they could, including deaths of natural causes, just because they wanted that nice round 100 million death mark. Like, it's really funny when people throw out that statistic.
That's not to mention those who died of starvation, which jumped...
And that's like something, as I understand it, that's something that like the author himself admitted to.
way into the 200 millions. More
Sorry,
people,
what was that?
That's not to mention those who died of starvation, which jumps way into the 200 millions. More people died underneath communist regimes than in World War I and World War II.
Okay, so now instead of actually giving any reason to believe in your God existing in the way that you say that he does, now we've decided that this video is about saying that, well, your God... God, what are you even trying to say? You're trying to compare the idea that your omnipotent, omnibenevolent God can exist with the fact that communism supposedly killed hundreds of millions of people. Like, these two things, they don't go together. They make no sense together. These have no correlation at all.
Two nearly combined. So a worldview isn't marked by the number of people who practice it well or not. So that's really not a proper argument against God's existence. In fact, it's an argument for his, because we're all standing with an objective understanding of there is evil, God come help us, and Scripture has this ultimate plan for the evil in our world, that God came in the person of Jesus and saved us from that evil. This has been the 5 arguments for God's existence. They nearly don't.
Damn, you gotta do it to him. Whenever you run out of arguments to actually talk about your God, you gotta just go ahead and start discrediting any sort of socialist, any sort of socialist worldview that might exist. Because the only thing that scares a lot of conservative people more than religious things and people not believing in God and people being godless is communism. There's just about nothing that scares them more than that. So I guess if you gotta try and put those in the same sentence so that you can try and discredit people and make people think, oh, well then yeah, that I guess, yeah, there must be a God because communism. If that's all you got, my friend, good on you. You congratulations. Those were your 5 evidences for God. Very exciting. I'm so glad that we went through these together. Oh, fuck. Alright, well, personally, I'm not convinced. So far, I have not been convinced by his 5 proofs of God. But let me know if you've been. I would be very interested to know if any of you have been persuaded by this man's very wise words. So yeah, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you'd like to see me cover next. If you have any other sort of religious or political videos that you think would be interesting to see me go over, go ahead and put them in the comments down below, and I will certainly take a look at them. But I guess beyond that, have a blessed day, fellow heathens.